Today is the wiring video, the one that a lot of people have asked for to go over in more detail. I will definitely go over in more detail than I did the first time. The first time I was just, first off, I was very new to YouTube and camera equipment and stuff, so it was pretty rough. But this time I'm going over in more detail. I can't go over every single little thing. I think I explained that later as to why it would just be such a long video. But it will be much more detailed than it was last time, that's for sure. So with that, let's just jump right in and get going with chopping up some wires. Here is the interior harness laid out to be thinned down. By the time all this has been thinned, it will look like this. This is really the only thing to keep. And then I run a separate circuit off of it to handle all of the in-truck stuff, the lights, headlights, taillights, things like that. This is not the only way to go about it. There's a lot of guys that keep the Crown Vic lights and then fuse them into their truck or whatever, but going for as much originality as I can, this is kind of the way, or this is the way that I did it. So basically, I already did this once. I didn't want to have to do it again, so I ripped it out of the truck and laid it out here so I can basically just copy. Now, there's been a lot of guys that have messaged me a lot about wanting to know exactly how to do the wiring. And can I tell them every single wire to cut? I wish I could, but I can't, because that would just take, as you see here, would take absolutely forever. And this only applies to a 2008. I know they changed wire colors here and there. I don't know exactly what years they changed them. I know that 2005 and up to 2011, there were changes in the colors of the wiring. 2005 was the first year of the CAN bus system. That's another thing. So if you try to follow, if you have a 2003 and try to follow this exactly, there's going to be things that don't make sense, don't line up. But I am going to try to be as comprehensive as possible without this video being 8 hours long. Now, to make this run as is, this is basically just a make it run harness, run and drive and everything. And what I've kept is the ignition, and I'll go over some of that and how I made that work. Then kept OBD2 port to run my CAN bus gauges. This is the original interior fuse panel. This is the firewall connector. This is the original lights switch. It's like the original style, but I made it work with the modern. Basically, all it needs is power. This is the brake pedal, another firewall connector. This is the throttle. This here is the fuel pump module. And this is the reset switch. That's it. That's all you need to make it run. So when you think of it in terms like that, it's really not too complicated. I know that I was intimidated by the wiring in this project. I'm not a guy that knows a whole lot about wiring and automotive wiring. So if I was able to pull it off, don't worry about it being too intimidating. It's just really a lot of removing the tape, removing the shielding, and just tracing the wires to the things that you need, which again are just a few core components to make the Vic part of it all run and drive. All of the door stuff, every single thing on the passenger side, there's a lot of wiring that goes on the passenger side and down. All that gets cut out. Once that's cut out, it really starts thinning down. But it's incredibly important to keep your reset switch and to keep your fuel pump module, which is around here somewhere. I'm about an hour into thinning this harness here, and really what it comes down to is finding connectors you don't need, cutting them off. Again, I just want a loom that's the run wires. Cutting them off. This was the headlight control and dimmer, that little control panel there. Don't need it, chop it off, follow the wires to where they go, cut them off. Just don't need them. These here that went to, I believe this is the driver's door. I'm pulling off the labels as I'm pulling the connectors off. Whatever it is, I know I don't need it. And so these will get cut off and traced back. I'm doing them one at a time because you don't want to cut all of it off and then scratch your head as to what it was. So again, going back to my reference over here, all I'm keeping this firewall connector, which there are some wires that have been cut off. I haven't depinned this yet for this very reason, to be able to reference what wires that I've cut off of both of that and the fuse panel. But again, if you follow the connectors you don't need, they'll lead back to these and you'll know which ones to cut off. So yeah, the firewall connector, the big one, the fuse box. The other connector is this gauge connector. I keep that because the CAN bus system runs through that and you don't want to cut that on your 05 and ups. OBD2 port, so I can run my gauges. A bunch of grounds, you know, all the grounds, just keep them. This is the throttle hookup on the drive-by wires. This is the brake. So yeah, throttle, brake. This is the fuel pump module, and this is the reset switch. And then right here, you've got the other firewall connector. That's it. That's all you need for run wires. Ignore this right here for right now. This is what I run all the lights and everything for the truck. That's separate. That's separate from the run wires. I know it seems complicated and it sure looks complicated when you get it laid out, but it's really not that bad. Of all the messages that I get, or of all the how-to questions that I get, it's about the wiring. And I understand how intimidating this is. I remember the first time I did it, how intimidated I was. But if you're careful, it's not a big deal. There's a connection here, looks like this connector, and it just connects passenger floor, those grounds that are on the passenger floor, passenger airbag, radio, cigarette lighter, all this stuff. You can just disconnect that. Take that out of the loop. Same with this here. This was the dome light. This is the radio antenna, rear defrost thing. And then we've got, rear speaker, passenger seat, ABS rear passenger door. Yeah, all this stuff, really. And we got, the other passenger door and the firewall connector under the HVAC unit. And then the spotlight, there's a passenger side spotlight. This whole thing can get cut off. Then that'll thin things down quite a bit. You just want to be really careful of the ones that are going to the back of the car that contain this, the fuel pump module, and then of course the reset switch. It runs on a different loom style here, but this all that went down the passenger side, this can get chopped off. More stuff has been cut out, and what I'm left with is this over here. This is the fuse panel, the firewall, the big firewall connector. And I've essentially kept just the gauge firewall connector, the fuse panel, and then the OBD2 connector. This is now separated from the other. It will get reconnected through the CAN bus. I will show that when I do that. And through another wire, I believe it's this blue wire with a white stripe. We'll get there when we get there, but this is separated now. This is the other firewall connector, the small square one. And we definitely want to keep the brake connector there. And have removed 2 or 3 of these were connected through a junction right in here. The one you want to keep is this one here. It's got the rear ABS. It's got random stuff, tail lights, all that stuff you don't need, but you do need the fuel pump module reset switch, the fuel pump module, and then the ground that is very important that goes to it. So you need this part here. You need to keep the one, this is still factory tape. You need to keep the one that has that stuff. The rest of it can go. And I'm just gonna cut this tape off and thin out the wires that we don't need, like the tail lights, the charcoal canister, if you decide to keep that or not. I'm gonna keep it on this truck. That's personal preference if you wanna keep it or not. And yeah, so just gonna thin a few wires that we don't need here. What did this go to? Oh, these were cut when I bought the car trunk. So apparently that was something in the trunk. So yeah, I don't need that. Got this harness thinned down to pretty much just, this goes to the fuel pump. This is the fuel pump module. This is the very important ground for it, fuel pump reset switch. Then this is the CAN bus wire, which I disconnected to thin everything down. It just made it easier, and I'll reconnect it to this CAN bus wire here that goes to this part of the harness, and then I will show you where I connect this particular wire. And that's really the only thing that these two use to communicate with each other, is just these two wires. Or 3 wires to be exact, because the CAN bus wires are twirled together like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Makes it simple. It just looks really intimidating when it's all laid out on the workbench, but when you get down to it, there's you know, it's not too bad. Now to join these two harnesses back together and complete the circuit for them, you take this CAN bus wire from this harness with the small connector, and then splice it into the CAN bus wires that go from the OBD2 port to these gauges here. That lets the CAN bus system all talk to each other. Then there's this blue wire right here. Now off the OBD2 port, pardon me while I try to get a good shot of this. This blue wire with the white stripe, there's 2 of them. There's one on top and one on bottom. Take the one on top, it comes out, and it went to like a junction, some kind of like duct tape looking junction with other wires that we have since removed. You take this and you connect it to the blue wire with a white stripe that goes to the big connector here, just under the circle. I don't know if you can see the shot of that. It's that particular wire. You connect these 2 wires together, you're in business. For the ignition wires on my car, I know this is for the 2008. I don't know how many years they kept these wire colors, but to get the ignition to work, for me, it's this simple green wire by itself. Then there's 2 wires that are green with a purple stripe. They get soldered together. Then there's these 3 wires, white with a purple stripe, purple with an orange stripe, gray with a yellow stripe. They get soldered together. And then, now you know how to hot wire a Crown Vic. And here's the ignition switch. I used the red, white, and blue because the first time I did this on my first truck, it was July 4th weekend when I did it. I was feeling patriotic. So on the original style ignition switch, red goes there, white goes there, and blue goes there. Getting ready to test start to see if it'll start at all. These grounds that you're left with, these are pretty obvious. One comes from the OBD2, one comes from the fuse box, and one goes to, I think, somewhere over there. Anyways, they're black. They're easy to know that they're ground. But one that might trip you up is one that goes to the gauge cluster here, but it's pink. There's a pink wire that comes out of this loom here that needs to be ground as well. Well, I am going to attempt to start it. I have not tried yet. Haven't hooked up the battery yet. But I figure if I have any issues, might as well record it. We got our negative connected. Try to find a way to situate this battery junction box. There we go. There, positive connected. Everything's clear. Let's give it a go. Now, in order to start this, you do have to have your throttle hooked up. Don't ask me how I know that. or all the hours that, never mind. All right, let's give it a go. Yeah, that's a no. All right, well, I got it to crank. I had the gear selector accidentally got popped into reverse. Pretty easy to do, as it's kind of spring loaded like that. So now it'll crank, but as you notice, fuel pump doesn't prime. This is a very common problem I see often on the forums, and let's figure it out, because yeah, I'm not sure what it is yet. I've checked all the grounds, but maybe there's a ground I missed. I'm not sure. I'm bringing you guys along on this one because yes, I see this on the Facebook groups, that this is a common thing, that they can get it to crank, but the fuel pump won't prime. I should add that I checked the inertia switch. You can reset it by just tapping it on the frame like that, and then it'll lift up. And you can push the button down again. And we'll try that. Yeah, see, nothing. So something's up that we need to figure out. Interesting thing is when I have keyed power, I do have power to the fuel pump. And that wiring is after the fuel pump module and the reset switch, so it should be getting power. Well, all the connections look fine, which tells me it's a ground. Because if it's got power, and the connections look fine, and the wiring's fine, we've got a ground issue. All right, looking at everything here, the relay, I jumped it, didn't do anything. The relay is just, tried a couple different relays, a relay that I know is good. So that's not it. Then we come down here, there's the inertia switch, there's the fuel pump driver module. The one black ground wire, that is ground to a very clean surface. And we come through here, and we've got this shield, which I'll show you is also ground. It's grounded, as it says it should be. Then we've got the fuel pump. And this is the yellow and white wire and black orange wires. Those don't need to be hooked up. That's just for your fuel gauge. So I'm not seeing electronic engine controls. There's that. That's a gray and red, brown and white, and red and pink. I'm just going to go and double check all of this and make sure all of this is correct. Now, it looks like I have at least one blown fuse. Let's check all the rest of them. Yep, just comes back as this is the only fuse that is blown. I'm gonna go look up which fuse that is before I replace it, just in case you guys run into this. It is labeled, okay, that'd be F-24, that is labeled Passive Anti-Theft System, PATS, which this doesn't have. Let's replace it and see what that does. That would make sense why it wouldn't allow the fuel pump to come on though. Alright, just a 10 amp. Make sure my key is off, just to be sure it was off. Let's see if we hear anything. Nothing. And what I'm kind of wondering now is if it's a signal from the PCM not getting back there. So, on to check that. I believe I have found the culprit, and it's what it was on the first truck. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure yet because I haven't tried it yet, but sitting here looking, checking all the grounds, checking the signal switch for the PCM to the fuel pump, which is this gray and red wire. Checked to make sure it was fine, no issues with the wire, and that it's still in the harness, and it definitely is. Everything's good there. And I'm just looking over all my lines, and I look down in here and I pull on this, hidden inside the wheel. Look at there. There's some grounds right there. So guys, don't feel bad when you're hung up for hours by missing a ground. There are tons of them on here, and I think it'll be helpful if I go over each and every one. But I'm gonna get this connected and try this thing again. I mean, the location of it tells me this was my problem, because this is the PCM ground, and it's as if the fuel pump module wasn't getting any signal from the PCM. That would be why. All right, moment of truth. I ran an extension. These grounds are just kind of temporary right now. I'll get them to where I want them once the truck body comes on. I just want to make sure I get all the wiring done before I go put the truck body on it, and thus making that more complicated, addressing any wiring issues. So these are just temporary grounds right now. Okay, there we go. Now, moment of truth. I put a new fuel filter on here, so it might take a little bit for it to prime. I'm just really confident that this is what it was. There it goes. That was it. All right, now with that done, let's go over all the ground, shall we? This shielded, this kind of like braided ground that goes through, that runs through to the fuel pump driver. I don't connect it. You don't need it. You do need, however, to ground it itself. This was to another ground, to another connector that we didn't need. So all you need is that one single ground. That's it till we come up to here. These are just ground. This is the ground to the one we found, to the computer. And we have grounds from both firewall connectors. And then this pink one that I pointed out that goes to the gauges, that needs to get ground. Some people said the gauges have to be plugged in for the car to run. That is not true. Definitely have to have the throttle pedal plugged in for the car to run. I learned that the hard way on the first go around. Yeah. Took a long time to figure that one out, but that does need to be connected. So there's those grounds there. Again, all the black ones, just keep all your black wires, and then that one pink one that can throw people. I think it's pink with an orange stripe. It is. You can barely see the orange stripe. That needs to get grounded. Then we move on to up here in this wiring loom. I don't know if these need to be grounded. I just ground them anyway. I did it on the first truck, and I'll do it on this one. Onto the battery junction box. The battery is grounded to the frame right there temporarily. The battery junction box has these grounds coming out of it that I grounded right here. That definitely needs to be grounded. And guys, that's all your grounds. And again, on this one, I turned it, it was 2 grounds that I just soldered into a single ground. Beautiful. Back in business. This is the massive pile of wires that have been removed, and I had commenters say, please go over every single wire you cut out. And please tell me every wire that you removed. And I'd love to be able to do that, but it would end up being a good 8-10 hour video. And I mean, hopefully this helped inform you of what to keep rather than what to get rid of. It really is a lot easier to tell you what to keep rather than what to cut. Now on to the under hood harness. This can all go. This all went to the, if you're getting rid of the stock heater AC, which I am going to use a vintage air system, this can go. And this just went through to the passenger side. I think that's like the passenger side doors, the seat, and the back door. That can go too. So we can get rid of all of that. And then I'll go over everything I get rid of along here. So keeping in the spirit of it's easier for me to tell you what to keep versus telling you what to cut out. We're gonna keep this black connector that goes to the engine right off of the battery junction box. I'm gonna keep this gray connector, and this goes to the ABS. That's all we're keeping. So down here where it, ignore this for a moment. This is the positive side. We're just talking about the data side here. So out of here, we don't need this that goes back here. And here we are with all the plastic protected covering stuff removed. I mean, I suppose you don't need to thin this. If you don't want to bother with it, you don't have to. I'm just going for a super clean build here, a super clean look. Just get rid of all the wires I don't need. But yeah, if you don't want to mess with this, you don't have to. You can just kind of tuck this away in your build. But I'm just doing it like I did that one, just to get rid of anything I don't need and just have it a lot cleaner. Because keep in mind, this will get trimmed, the front of the frame, and a lot of this will get pushed back, the radiator and the condenser, all this stuff will get pushed back. So then you'd have all these wires that come out to, you know, like a wiring loom coming out to here, and then you have to find a way to tuck that all. But I mean, if that's, you could definitely go that way. I just prefer to go this way where there's no wires crossing across here at all. You just retain the wires that go across the back that are more hidden that way. So I cleared out quite a few wires, got it much thinner than it was. By the time it gets all wrapped up with tape and then covered in a protective sheath over that, I'll show you later when I get there, it'll be much smaller, and I will run this behind the motor following the engine wires here, kind of tucked away behind instead of out here in front. But it's much thinner, and we got rid of a bunch of stuff don't need up here. Now it's just a matter of kind of tidying it all up, and then I'll plug the battery back in just to make sure the thing starts. But I only removed headlight, turn signal light, parking light stuff, airbag, horn, stuff like that. We're going to be running the horn off of a different circuit. Just any and all of that. Definitely keeping the fan motor, but that's just right here. So basically all I removed were lights that we didn't need, and it definitely thins it down, probably about half almost. And then of course we got rid of the wiring that went that way. Time to get this all tidied up and looking good and wrapped up, and then moved to behind the engine. And that will pretty much get this thing ready for a body to get set down on it. Not a whole lot more to do other than just tidy up the looms, the wiring harnesses that we have now made, much thinner wiring harnesses, tidy them up, make them look pretty, so they're not just laying about like this. But yeah, this is definitely progress. Definitely progress. Ready to get that truck body on this frame. I hope this helped you guys with the wiring. Also right here, this is the wiper motor. We don't need that. But you do want to keep this connector here on your brakes, brake booster. I'll get a lot of questions about how I wire up the wipers. I'll show you when we get there. We don't need that connector for the wiper motor. We're just going to use the truck. Basically, that's all I do, is run power to the truck's wiper motor and just use it as stock. Well, I hope this one helped. I know there was a lot of people that were really waiting for this video, and I hope that it helps you. Really, that is the goal. I hope this helps you in your thinning down of your harnesses. Again, there's other ways to go about it. This is the way I go about it. I just like to get it right down to its run wires. I'm doing aftermarket AC, aftermarket gauges, aftermarket, or not aftermarket lighting, but just the standard truck lighting through a separate circuit system, which again, we'll go over that. It's super easy. You just provide power to the circuit. They are almost two separate things. One just controls everything on the body of the truck, and the other just controls all the chassis stuff and the drivetrain. I've noticed with the recent uploads actually being a little more active now, that the subscribers have
blown up a little bit, which is fantastic. If you're new here, welcome. Happy to have you aboard. Let's keep this channel growing so we can get into some more projects. That is the goal. Guys, that's gonna do it for this one. If you found it helpful at all, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps these videos out the way the metrics work, brings in more subscribers, and then we can get into some more projects. I truly appreciate it. Guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.